We are joined now by former New Jersey Governor Christie. He is running for the nomination as the Republican in the 2024 election. Governor, appreciate you joining us. I'll start right off here. Hope you had a good fourth. I
I
think
did.
you have said that you would not vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden if they are the Democrat and Republican nominees. So, who would you like to be the Republican nominee if it weren't you? Who's running right now? Who would your top pick be if you're not a Trump guy? I don't think you'd be a DeSantis guy based on some of the things I've seen. Who would be a good nominee other than yourself that you would support as a Republican?
I think that almost anybody else in the race, other than Donald Trump, would be somebody that I could vote for and support.
Governor Christie, sorry, go ahead. Is he? Yeah, I was this Buck. I was going to ask you, sir. There are people that are seeing, your appearances on TV, and right now, I'd say, just roughly speaking, the audience that you're talking to is probably about half Trump and about half somebody else, right? Something along those lines. To the people who are on the Trump side of things, they see you taking these swings at Trump, and they ask, and we've got a whole bunch of emails in, which I do want to get to from some of our listeners to pose to you, but they ask, is this guy just trying to tear down the Republican frontrunner, or does he really want to be president? What do you say to that?
I really want to be president. And I think the only way to do that is to defeat the frontrunner. Buck, we saw this happen in 2016, and I was part of it. This idea that there are different lanes, and there was an establishment lane where it was me and Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and John Kasich. And then the other lane was Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson. And somehow it was going to be like the NCAA tournament. There was going to be one winner out of each bracket that were going to play off against each other. Well, by the time we got done beating each other up in this quote unquote establishment lane, Donald Trump had already won the nomination. And so my view on this is that there's one lane to the Republican nomination. Donald Trump is the front runner. He's at the head of that lane. And if you want to be at the head of that lane, you have to defeat him and go right through him. And so I don't think the two are mutually exclusive at all. In fact, I think the only way to beat a front runner like Donald Trump is to take him on directly.
You were a very successful prosecutor before you became a governor. When you look at the charges against Trump in South Florida, the charges against Trump in New York City, and what may be future charges brought against Trump, do you consider them to be legitimate, or do you consider them to be primarily political in nature? Would you be troubled if you were still a United States attorney at the idea of trying to put the chief political rival of the current president of the United States in prison? How would you assess this based on your background?
Sure, Clay. First off, on the New York thing, I think it's totally political. I think it's a ridiculous thing for the Manhattan DA to do. When I travel to Manhattan, which is almost every week, I don't know how indicting Donald Trump for a payment to a porn star 7 years ago is making the island of Manhattan any safer for the people who live there. And that's his job. This is purely politics. He ran for the job saying he was going to go after Donald Trump. And I would never bring a case like that. And I think it was completely inappropriate. By the way, whether he was a former president or not, I think this is a baloney case. But especially so for a former president. I don't agree with the New York case at all. Now, I think the case regarding the classified documents is significantly different. And I think it's different because we have to make sure that our justice system, which I think was totally screwed up by Eric Holder, Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, and Jim Comey. I think Hillary Clinton should have been indicted. I said so at the time. I think what she did was an absolute violation of the law. But I don't think that what you do to correct that system is to then give a person from another party a pass. The president's presumed innocent. But I will tell you this, the things that are alleged in that indictment, I think are serious matters, and it's worthy of bringing charges based on the evidence they've put in the indictment. We'll have to see if they can prove their case. I had to do that for 7 years. You got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt to an impartial jury. If they do, I don't think there's anything improper with charging him, given the nature of his conduct, not just the documents themselves, which is disturbing, but frankly, the evidence that they presented in the indictment of obstruction of justice, to me, lying to his own lawyers, instructing his lawyers to lie to the Justice Department. The thing that's the shame of this, guys, is that none of this had to happen. If he had just returned the documents in the 18 months he was asked to do it, we wouldn't even be here.
So do you think if he's convicted, he should go to prison? And if he were in prison and Chris Christie were the president of the United States, is that a pardonable issue in your mind? Or do you think Trump should spend the rest of his life in prison if he were convicted on these charges?
I have a difficult time sending anybody he would be probably 78 or 79 by the time this matter is brought to a resolution. I have a problem sending anybody of that age to prison, frankly. And then you add to it, he's a former president. But I think that's different, Clay, than a pardon. Pardon, he's going to have to accept the conduct he engaged in. I don't think Donald Trump will ever do that. But whether he belongs in jail or not, I've said this before, I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of any former president going to jail, and certainly someone of his age. So that might be a situation where you might do a commutation of the sentence if he were sent to jail and not a pardon. But I have a hard time, and I would feel that way, by the way, about anybody of that age, whether it was Donald Trump or not. I don't think, given the crimes that are alleged, that it's necessarily something you need to spend the rest of your life in prison for.
Governor Christie, one of our VIPs, Jim, wrote in with this question for you. He says, is it true that Christie recommended Christopher Wray for FBI director under Trump? If so, what does he think of Wray's performance? And could I just add to that, Governor Christie, the personnel issues, how do you think that stacks up for Trump overall? And what would you do if you were the one actually advising any Republican going forward about personnel differently?
Well, first of all, on Christopher Wray, yes, I was one of the people who recommended Christopher Wray to President Trump, and I'm proud to have done so. And I think he's done a very good job. I think he's gotten rid of every part. Yeah, I do. I think he's gotten rid of every part of the leadership in the FBI that was there under Jim Comey. Secondly, I think that what he's done in terms of the execution of the search warrant on Donald Trump's home was to allow there to be 18 months of letter requests, informal requests, meetings with lawyers.
Did we lose the governor there for a minute? I think we did.
I'm sorry, am I still here or no?
Usually do. Should we go to break, Buck, and see if we can get him back to finish out the hour here, maybe, if that makes sense? Because he was in the middle of a really interesting answer there about Christopher Wray, I think.
Yeah,
if we can get him.
I would like to press a little more on the Christopher Wray issue and the deep state and the reality.
I think do we have him back here now?
Am I back, guys? Am I here? I can see you and hear you.
We got
sir, could you hold through with us so we can give you time for a real answer? We're just going to go to a station
Sure.
break. We'll come right back. Do you have a couple minutes?
No problem. Absolutely happy to, guys.
Okay, all right.
He'll stay with us. All right, we're talking to Governor Chris Christie. We'll continue here, and that's coming up next. All right, we're talking to Governor Chris Christie here. He got cut off. We want to let him tackle a few more questions from us, and if we can get in some of your questions. We got to one VIP question. So, Governor Christie, you think Chris Wray's done a pretty good job? I mean, a lot of people are outraged at what feels like a two-tiered system of justice right now, one for Republicans, one for Democrats. If you think Wray's doing a good job, why would any Republican voter think that you have what is necessary to tear down the establishment that is politicizing everything from within DOJ and the federal apparatus in general?
Well, because Chris Wray doesn't decide who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. He investigates. The problem at the Justice Department is with the leadership of the Justice Department, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General. It was the same under Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. It's no better under Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco and the people that they've brought in. People get confused about this, guys. The FBI doesn't decide who gets prosecuted. And many times the FBI doesn't even decide who gets investigated. When I was U.S. Attorney, there would be many times where I'd call the FBI and say, hey, I want you to look at this matter or that matter. And then they go off and investigate. Then they bring the facts back to the prosecutors, and the prosecutors decide whether the case is going to be brought or it's not going to be brought.
But so you agree that, like, Russia, Governor Christie, that Russia collusion was a sham, right? And which was
Total
run
sham.
through the FBI.
Right, except that Chris Wray had nothing to do with it. That was Jim Comey and the leadership of the FBI under Jim Comey. And when Chris Wray got in, you know what he did, Buck? He fired all of them. All of them. Every part of the Comey leadership was fired by Chris Wray when he
What do you
became
think
FBI
then-
director.
It's interesting. So, what do you think about the Hunter Biden treatment? We talked earlier, 67% of people say they think he got a sweetheart deal. You have great experience as a U.S. attorney. What do you think about Weiss and whether he had any independence? And for Christopher Wray, we know that the Hunter Biden laptop, I would presume you agree, is 100% authentic. That is, it was not Russian disinformation. Why has the FBI never come out and said, hey, yeah, the laptop was real? They let Joe Biden get away with tons of lies surrounding that laptop. And do you think that Weiss, based on the information that you have seen, has had independence to be able to adequately conduct an investigation of Hunter Biden, or do you think he got a sweetheart deal?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff there, Clay, but let me break it down. One, yes, he did get a sweetheart deal, and never should have taken 5 years to do 2 misdemeanor tax counts and to dismiss a gun count. 2, I don't know whether Weiss was truly not independent or is truly incompetent, but it's one or the other. Either he's incompetent or he wasn't allowed to be independent. And that's where I think oversight has to come in from the Congress to bring Weiss in front of the committee and make a determination whether he's incompetent or whether he has had his hands tied by the Justice Department. And third, on the Hunter Biden laptop, that is not for the FBI to say. I am confident that the FBI has opinions about the Hunter Biden laptop, but they're not allowed to go off and just say that stuff. When there's an ongoing investigation, that's going to be Weiss's judgment. And if he was truly independent, if he wasn't, then it's the Attorney General's judgment. My point on this is that Hunter Biden has gotten an absolute sweetheart deal. And by the way, I despise Democrats who all want to have new gun laws, yet they don't want to enforce the gun laws that are on the books. Hunter Biden lied to get a gun permit, then mishandled the gun. We're not prosecuting him under that. That should be a 5-year sentence, fellas.
Do you think the judge who is going to be looking at this, she is a Trump-appointed judge in Delaware, do you think she should reject the plea agreement based on the evidence that is out there that this may well not have been an independent investigation?
I think she has to absolutely haul everybody into court and ask all the questions that she needs to ask and has a right to ask before she approves any plea. And if she thinks that he was not independent, that misrepresentations were made by the Attorney General of the United States, then the whole thing's got to get thrown out and started over.
Governor Christie, the latest Quinnipiac poll that I can see here has you at 5. You at 5. DeSantis at 25, Trump at 49. So let's say Trump roughly half of GOP voters, according to Quinnipiac, as of last week. That's about, I think this audience is probably half, maybe more, Trump voters in this primary. What is your pitch to convince them to consider voting for you or any other candidate that they may not already be aware of?
Well, because if they had done the same logic as that at this time in 2015, they would have only been able to pick between Jeb Bush and Scott Walker. Donald Trump was at 4% on June 30th of 2015. So I don't think voters should determine who they're going to vote for based upon who's ahead in the polls at the moment, because if they had, it would have been Jeb Bush or Scott Walker. And I don't think that anybody would have wanted to see that who wound up voting for Donald Trump. The fact is, we have.
But so I mean, what's your pitch? What's your pitch to them is the point. I'm not just I just give the polls to give a context here.
Well, yeah, no, but Buck, I think what you said was why would they vote for you given those polls? Well, the polls don't matter. But secondly, look, I think we want to start to get things done. And if you look at so many of the things that Donald Trump promised me when I endorsed him in 2016 and promised other Republican voters, whether it's build a wall and have Mexico pay for it, whether it's, balance the budget in 4 years, whether it's retire the national debt in 8 years, whether it's repeal and replace Obamacare. And that's just 4 of them that he failed on with a Republican Congress in his first 2 years. We need somebody who knows how to get things done. I was 8 years in a blue state with a Democratic legislature, reformed pensions, reformed health care, got school choice in place, and fired the entire Camden City Police Department and hired a new one, and murder rate is now down 75% in that city. Let's get somebody who knows how to get things done as opposed to somebody who is completely self-centered and shows nothing but drama and care for himself. And that's what Donald Trump does every day. And if you looked at his tweets or his true social posts over 4th of July weekend, this is a guy who is so obsessed with himself. He doesn't care about the country.
Oh, we lost.
He's back. So, Governor, kind of thinking through this, you said earlier in your talk with us, and we got only a minute left, but we appreciate the time, that you would vote for any Republican other than Donald Trump. If Trump is the nominee for Republicans, almost any, all right, would you consider running third party? Are you that anti-Trump that you would run against him?
Absolutely not. I'm a Republican, and I want to vote for the Republican nominee for president, but I can't vote for somebody like Donald Trump. But no, I would never consider running third party. I have absolutely no interest in that. I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican my whole life, and I intend to be a Republican for the rest of my life.
Governor Christie, we really appreciate you coming on, giving us a little extra time, too, and speaking to everyone all across the country. What's the site for your campaign, sir?
It's chrischristie.com. Real easy, Buck. It's chrischristie.com. If you want to see me on the stage, go and donate $1. We get to 40,000 donors, then we'll be on the stage on August 23rd, and we'll see what kind of conversation we can have for Republican voters.
Governor Christie, everybody. Sir, thank you for being here with us.